Hello, and welcome to today's podcast. I'm Emma, and with me is Max. We're really excited to be here with you today, and we're going to talk about something really important: how to improve your writing in English. Whether you're learning English as a second language or just looking to get better at writing, we've got some tips and advice that will help you.
That's right. Writing is such an important skill, and it can be really challenging, especially when you're learning English. But don't worry. Today, we're going to break it down and make it easier for you. You don't have to be perfect, but with practice, you'll definitely get better.
One of the first things we want to talk about is something really simple but super important: reading. Reading is one of the best ways to improve your writing. Why? Because when you read, you're not only learning new words and phrases, but you're also seeing how sentences are put together. You can learn how good writers write, and that can help you write better too.
Exactly. It doesn't matter what you read, either. It could be books, articles, or even short stories. The more you read, the more you understand how English works. And don't worry if you don't understand every word at first. The goal is to see how the sentences flow and how ideas are shared.
That's a great point, Max. Another good tip is to start small. If you're just beginning, don't try to write long essays or big stories right away. Start with something short, like writing a diary or even a short paragraph about your day. It's okay to take baby steps.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes when people think about writing, they imagine it's going to take a lot of time, but it doesn't have to be that way. Even writing a few sentences each day can make a big difference. For example, you could write about what you did today or describe something you saw outside.
And don't forget to use simple words. When we're learning, sometimes we think we need to use big words to sound smart. But the truth is, it's better to write clearly and simply. When you write clearly, people will understand you better.
Right. Writing isn't about impressing people with fancy words. It's about communicating your ideas. So, using simple words and short sentences is completely fine, especially when you're learning. As you get better, you'll naturally start to use more complex words and sentences, but don't rush it.
Another thing that can help is to write about things you enjoy. If you're interested in the topic, it's easier to write about it. Let's say you love cooking. You could write a recipe or a description of your favorite dish. Or if you love sports, you could write about your favorite team or a recent game.
That's a good idea. Writing about something you like makes the process more fun, and when you enjoy what you're doing, you'll want to do it more often. And remember, the more you write, the better you'll get. Writing is just like any other skill, it takes practice.
Another thing that can really help is to pay attention to spelling and grammar, but don't get too stressed about it. You don't need to be perfect at grammar when you're starting. It's more important to focus on getting your ideas down on paper. You can always go back later and check your spelling and grammar.
Yes, definitely, and there are lots of tools online that can help you with that, like spell checkers or grammar apps. These can help you find mistakes and learn from them. But remember, it's okay to make mistakes. That's how we learn.
That's so true. We all make mistakes, even native speakers. What's important is to not let mistakes stop you from writing. If you're always worried about making a mistake, you'll never write anything. Just write and fix things later.
Yes, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Writing is a process, and the more you do it, the easier it will become. Okay, so we've talked about reading more to improve your writing, starting small, and not worrying too much about mistakes. Now, let's get into something really useful: planning before you write. This is something a lot of people skip, but it can really help you write better and faster.
Yes, planning your writing is super important. When you just start writing without a plan, it's easy to get lost or confused about what to say. You might find yourself halfway through your writing and realize, wait, what was I trying to say again? That's why planning is such a good idea. It helps you organize your thoughts before you even start writing.
Exactly. And planning doesn't have to be complicated. It could be as simple as making a short list of the main points you want to talk about. For example, if you're writing a story or even just a paragraph, you could ask yourself, what is the main idea? Then, you can make a list of 3 or 4 points you want to include. This way, you stay focused.
That's a great tip. Even for something as simple as writing about your day, a plan can help. Let's say you want to write about what you did today. You could start by thinking, okay, what were the main things I did? I woke up, I went to work, and I had dinner with a friend. Those could be your 3 main points. Then you just write about each one.
Right, and when you break it down like that, it makes writing feel a lot less scary. Instead of thinking, I have to write a whole page, you're just thinking about one small part at a time. After you finish one point, you move on to the next. It feels much easier when you take it step by step.
Absolutely. It's like putting together a puzzle. You don't try to do it all at once. You start with one piece and then find another piece that fits. Little by little, you finish the puzzle. Writing is kind of the same. Piece by piece, your writing comes together.
Another helpful thing to do when you're writing is to think about your reader. Who are you writing for? Are you writing for yourself, just to practice? Or are you writing for someone else, like a friend or a teacher? Thinking about your reader can help you decide how to write. For example, if you're writing for a friend, you might use casual language. But if you're writing for a teacher, you might want to be a bit more formal.
That's a good point. When we write, we're usually trying to communicate with someone, even if that someone is ourselves. So it's important to think about how we want to sound. If you're writing something fun, you might use friendly words and expressions. But if you're writing something more serious, like an email for work or school, your language might need to be more professional. It's all about knowing your audience.
Exactly. And this brings us to another important part of improving your writing, reviewing what you've written. This is something that even experienced writers do. After you write something, it's really helpful to go back and read it again. This is when you can check for any mistakes or things that don't make sense.
Yes, reviewing your writing is so important, but it's something a lot of people forget to do. When you're finished writing, it's tempting to just be done and move on. But taking a few minutes to read over what you wrote can make a huge difference. You might notice that you forgot a word or that a sentence doesn't sound quite right. It's your chance to make your writing even better.
And don't feel like you have to fix everything at once. When you're reviewing, you can focus on one thing at a time. Maybe the first time you read it, you just check for spelling mistakes. Then, the second time, you might check if your sentences make sense. You don't have to fix everything all at once.
Exactly. And if you're not sure if something sounds good or not, here's a great tip. Read it out loud. Reading your writing out loud helps you hear how it sounds. Sometimes when you read in your head, things seem fine. But when you say them out loud, you realize something is off. Maybe a sentence is too long, or it just doesn't sound natural.
Yes, that's such a good tip. When you read out loud, you can catch awkward sentences or places where the writing doesn't flow well. It helps you hear what your reader might hear. And it's okay if you find things you need to change. That's what reviewing is for. Writing isn't perfect the first time. It's a process, and it's normal to revise and make changes.
Definitely. And speaking of making changes, another thing you can do is get feedback from someone else. Sometimes it's hard to see our own mistakes, but someone else might notice something that you missed. If you have a friend or teacher who can read what you've written, that can be really helpful. They can give you advice or suggestions to make your writing better.
That's so true. Feedback from others can really help you improve, and it doesn't have to be formal. Even asking a friend, "Hey, can you take a quick look at this?" can give you useful insights. They might notice something you didn't think about, like a confusing sentence or a word that doesn't fit.
Exactly. And don't feel bad if someone gives you suggestions. Feedback is a good thing because it helps you grow. Every writer, no matter how good they are, gets feedback. It's all part of the learning process. The more you practice and the more feedback you get, the better you'll become.
And remember, writing is personal. Everyone has their own style and way of expressing ideas. It's okay if your writing doesn't look like someone else's. The important thing is to keep practicing and finding your own voice. The more you write, the more you'll discover what works for you.
That's a really important point, Max. Writing isn't about copying someone else's style. It's about finding your own way to communicate. Maybe you like writing short, simple sentences, or maybe you like adding more details. Both are fine. Writing is a way to express yourself, and your style will grow and change as you practice more.
Exactly. So, don't compare yourself too much to other writers. Focus on your own progress. If you look back at something you wrote a few weeks ago, you'll probably notice how much you've improved already. And that's something to feel proud of. Every time you write, you're getting better, even if it doesn't feel like it at the moment.
That's so true. Writing is a journey, and it takes time. But every step you take brings you closer to becoming a better writer. Whether it's writing a few sentences a day, reading more, or getting feedback from a friend, every little bit helps. Just keep going, and don't give up.
Exactly. And don't forget, writing can be fun too. It doesn't always have to be serious or perfect. Try to enjoy the process, experiment with different ideas, and see where your writing takes you. The more you enjoy it, the more you'll want to do it, and the better you'll get.
Yes, writing can be fun, and when you're having fun, you'll find that it becomes easier to write. So don't stress too much about it. Just take your time, practice regularly, and enjoy the process. Before you know it, you'll see big improvements in your writing.
Now that we've talked about planning your writing, reviewing, and even getting feedback, let's dive into something that often makes a big difference: vocabulary. Having a good range of vocabulary can really improve your writing. It's not just about knowing a lot of words. It's about knowing when and how to use them. But don't worry, building your vocabulary doesn't have to be difficult.
That's right, Max. One of the best ways to build your vocabulary is by learning new words in context. This means learning words while reading or listening to something, rather than just memorizing a list of random words. When you see a word in a sentence or hear it in a conversation, you can understand how it's used, and that makes it easier to remember.
Exactly. And when you're reading, if you come across a word you don't know, try not to stop and look it up right away. Instead, see if you can guess the meaning based on the rest of the sentence or paragraph. This is called using context clues. For example, if you read, "She was ecstatic when she heard the good news," even if you don't know the word ecstatic, you can probably guess it means something like very happy because of the phrase good news.
Yes, that's such a useful skill. Using context clues helps you keep the flow of your reading, and over time, it helps you understand new words without needing a dictionary all the time. And later, if you want to check the word, you can look it up to confirm what you thought it meant. But don't feel like you have to know every word right away.
And another tip for expanding your vocabulary is to write down the new words you learn. Keep a small notebook or even use your phone to make a list of words you want to remember. But don't just write the word, write an example sentence with it. This will help you remember how to use the word in real situations.
That's such a good idea, Max. Writing the word in a sentence helps you practice using it. And when you go back to look at your list later, you'll not only see the word but also remember the context in which you first saw or heard it. This makes it more likely that you'll use the word correctly in your own writing.
Right. And speaking of writing, one of the best ways to practice your new vocabulary is to actually use it in your writing. When you learn a new word, try to use it in a sentence or paragraph. Don't be afraid to experiment with it. Even if you're not sure if you're using it perfectly, the more you practice, the more comfortable you'll get.
Exactly. Writing is a great way to reinforce new vocabulary. And remember, even if you make mistakes, that's okay. Mistakes are part of learning. If you're not sure about a word, you can always check later or ask someone for feedback, but the important thing is to try using it. The more you use a word, the more natural it will become for you.
That's so true. And here's another tip. Don't feel like you need to use big or complicated words all the time. Sometimes, simple words are just as powerful, if not more so, than fancy ones. What's important is that your writing is clear and easy to understand. So, if you know a simple word that gets your message across, use it.
Yes, clarity is key. Think about what you're trying to say and choose the words that express your idea clearly. Sometimes, people think they need to use impressive words to make their writing sound better. But actually, good writing is about communicating your ideas in a way that's easy to understand. If a simple word does the job, that's perfect.
Exactly. But as you continue learning, you'll naturally start using more advanced vocabulary, and that's great. It's all about balance. The more you practice, the better you'll get at knowing when to use a simple word and when a more advanced word might be a better fit.
That's a really important point, Max. And another thing that helps with vocabulary is learning synonyms. These are words that mean the same or almost the same thing. For example, instead of always using the word happy, you could use joyful, cheerful, or content. Learning synonyms gives you more options when you write, so you don't repeat the same word too much.
Yes, synonyms are great for making your writing more interesting. If you use the same word over and over, your writing might feel a bit boring or repetitive. But when you mix in some synonyms, it keeps your writing fresh and engaging. Plus, it helps you learn new words.
That's so true. And there are lots of ways to find synonyms. You can use a thesaurus, which is a tool that lists words with similar meanings. Or if you're writing on the computer, there are many apps and websites that can suggest synonyms for you as you type. But remember, not all synonyms are exactly the same, so it's good to check that the word fits the sentence you're writing.
Exactly. Sometimes synonyms have slightly different meanings or feelings. For example, happy and content both mean you're in a good mood, but content might feel a little calmer, like you're satisfied. So, while learning synonyms is really helpful, make sure the word you choose fits the feeling or message you want to send.
Yes, and that brings us to another really important part of writing, tone. Tone is the feeling or attitude that your writing gives. It could be happy, serious, funny, or even sad. The words you choose can change the tone of your writing. For example, if you're writing a letter to a friend, your tone might be casual and friendly. But if you're writing an email for work, your tone might need to be more formal.
That's a great point. Knowing your tone can help guide your word choice. If you're writing something serious, you might avoid using too many jokes or slang. But if you're writing something fun, like a story or a letter to a friend, it's okay to use informal language. The tone really depends on who you're writing to and what you're writing about.
Exactly. And one way to figure out the right tone is to imagine the person you're writing to. Ask yourself, how would I speak to this person? If it's a close friend, you might use more relaxed language. If it's a teacher or a boss, you might choose more formal words. Thinking about this situation can really help you set the right tone for your writing.
That's such a good tip, Emma. And speaking of tone, I think it's also important to remember that writing can show emotion. If you're writing a story or even just describing your day, you can use words that show how you feel. For example, if you had a great day, you might use words like exciting or amazing. If your day wasn't so good, you might use words like tiring or frustrating. This helps your reader understand not just what happened, but how you felt about it.
Yes, writing isn't just about facts, it's also about emotions. When you add emotion to your writing, it becomes more interesting and engaging. It makes your reader feel more connected to what you're saying, and this doesn't have to be complicated. Even simple words like happy, sad, angry, or excited can help show emotion in your writing.
Exactly. And here's another great tip to improve your writing. Practice describing things in detail. Sometimes, when we're learning, we write very simple sentences like, I went to the park or I ate dinner. That's fine, but adding more detail can make your writing more interesting. For example, instead of just saying, I went to the park, you could say, I went to the park and saw children playing on the swings, and the trees were full of bright yellow leaves.
Yes, adding details like that really paints a picture for your reader. It makes your writing come alive. You don't have to write long, detailed sentences all the time, but sometimes adding just a little more can make your writing much more vivid and engaging.
Exactly. And describing things in detail helps you practice using new vocabulary too. For example, instead of just saying the food was good, you could say the food was delicious with a rich, creamy sauce. Adding these little details helps you practice using adjectives, which are words that describe things.
Yes, and it's also a great way to practice using your senses in writing. When you describe something, think about how it looks, sounds, smells, tastes, or feels. This can help you add more depth to your writing. For example, if you're writing about a trip to the beach, you could describe the sound of the waves, the feeling of the sand under your feet, or the smell of the salty air.
That's a fantastic tip. Using your senses in writing makes it more interesting and real for the reader. And it's fun to practice too. You can try describing simple things like your morning routine or what you see outside your window. The more you practice, the better you'll get at using details and creating vivid descriptions.
Yes, and remember, writing is a skill that gets better with practice. The more you write, the more confident you'll become. So don't be afraid to try new things, experiment with different words, and explore different styles. Writing is a journey, and every time you write, you're getting closer to becoming a better writer.
Absolutely, Emma. Writing can feel challenging at times, but if you keep practicing, reading, and learning new words, you'll see improvement. The most important thing is to enjoy the process and keep going, even if it feels difficult. You're making progress with every word you write.
Well, that's all for today. We hope these tips help you improve your writing and make it more enjoyable. Remember to keep practicing. Don't be afraid of mistakes. And most of all, have fun with your writing.
Yes, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share this podcast with your friends and family. We love helping you learn, and we're so glad you joined us today. Keep writing, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.